so you see this in the French Revolution. There were moderates in the early part of it, that recognizing that there were problems and wanting to work together. The moderates got guillotined. The polarity began. The same was true in the Russian Revolution. The same was true in the Chinese Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, and so on. Those polarity gets greater and greater as there's a greater intensity to fight.
Ray Dalio, the founder of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, has some grave warnings for all of us now that Donald Trump is in office.
That we're in somewhere in phase 5, which is as the empire begins to decline, as you have a rising superpower, as the debt bubble is getting out of control. With that perspective, was what happened with the SVB bank collapse, was that something that you knew, okay, something like that is coming, or was that a surprise to you?
No, it was obvious. Look, if you just I want to talk about the mechanics, really. I'm so eager to pass along an understanding of the mechanics so people themselves can do the analysis. So one man's debts are another man's assets. Okay, so what happened? The government had to sell a lot of debt. And when it sold a lot of debt, there were a lot of entities that bought a lot of bonds, government bonds. And money was very easy, which meant that short-term interest rates were very low. And money was actually being given away because they had interest-only loans and interest rates were less than 1%. And you didn't have to pay back principal, so you could go get money. And so that created a lot of debt, and it created a lot of buying of government bonds.
His advice? Get real about your basic needs and stash enough cash to cover them. Simple, right? But there's more. Dalio also sees a perfect storm of threats looming over the U.S., and he's sounding the alarm. On Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory podcast, Dalio, worth over $16 billion, didn't sugarcoat anything. He urged people to take a hard look at their incomes, expenses, and savings, and then do a stress test. Imagine your income suddenly drops to zero. How long could you maintain your lifestyle? He believes many of us have lost sight of what really matters. Basic stuff like a bed to sleep in, food to eat, and healthcare. I think we visualize too much the things that we're used to, Dalio said. Drip it down to the essentials, and you'll find a way to live without constant stress. In fact, he thinks this could even lead to a happy life. Dalio says too many people are going broke because they haven't done this homework. It's the ambiguity, it's the worry, it's the stress, he said. If you map out your worst-case scenario from the start, anything beyond survival is just the cherry on top. Once you've got safe, everything beyond that is luxury.
Well, in terms of, I think in terms of any environment, the lessons that we get over and over again is that you can't be sure what the next environment and twists and turns are. What you don't know is greater than anything you do know. So if you were in the airline business or you were in the hospitality business, and that was wonderful and you liked it and everything else, all of a sudden that changed in important ways. So the important thing are the more general abilities. In terms of investing, what that means is you need to know how to diversify well. That's the most important thing. In terms of any aspect in life, to know how to deal with what you don't know is more important than anything you know, because the world is so much more surprising than you can really be sure of. So in a general sense for skills, I mean, I think, and skills are part of what are your environment. You know, find out those things that are self-sufficient and maintain flexibility. You have to know how to maintain flexibility and change well. If your career is in one area, you have to know you have to develop the skill for changing a career. And that all comes down to knowing how to find the path. to know how to triangulate well with others.
But while we're busy getting our finances in order, Dalio warns that bigger problems are brewing. Consumers are getting slammed by rising prices on everything: food, housing, gas, and their debts are piling up thanks to higher interest rates. The U.S. government's growing debt, increasing inequality, and challenges from global rivals like China and Russia are all adding fuel to the fire. And it's not just him seeing the cracks. Regional banks, real estate, and the tech sector are all feeling the heat. Dalio blames reckless government spending and low interest rates for a lot of it. We're going to have financial and economic problems at the same time as we have internal fighting and external risks, he warned. And while Dalio's concerns about the economy are chilling, the stock market, oddly enough, doesn't seem to care. After the recent election, the Dow surged more than 900 points, adding $64 billion to the fortunes of the world's richest. The market, it seems, has a knack for bouncing back, even in the face of political chaos. Though Dalio has been wary of both presidential candidates, he initially voiced his doubts about a peaceful transition if Trump lost. But the reality turned out differently. After Trump won, Kamala Harris conceded graciously. Still, history has shown that even when political chaos ensues, like on January 6, 2021, the markets somehow keep their cool. Despite the turmoil at the Capitol, the Dow hit 31,000 points for the first time ever, boosted by hopes for more government aid under Biden. That may not be the case with tensions within the country ramping up. Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 U.S. presidential election wasn't just a win, it was a landslide. Unlike 2016, where he squeaked by with the Electoral College while losing the popular vote, this time Trump crushed his opponent, Kamala Harris, with a staggering 4 million more votes. But how did Harris lose so badly? It's simple. The billionaire-backed neoliberal Democrats offered no real alternative to the billionaire-backed Republicans' faux populism. The economy was front and center in 2024, with polls showing it as the top issue for voters. Concern about the state of the economy hit levels not seen since the financial crisis of 2007-09. In short, it was the economy, stupid. 3/4 of voters who said the economy was their biggest worry backed Trump. 2/3 of all voters said they believed the economy was not so good or downright poor. Meanwhile, Biden supporters in the corporate media seemed baffled, insisting that the economy was in good shape. They pointed to a hot labor market, booming stocks, lower inflation, growing GDP. But the truth was hard to ignore. The stock market's record highs didn't trickle down to everyday Americans. The richest 10% own 93% of the stocks in the U.S., while the bottom 50% hold just 1%. So when the S&P 500 breaks records, it's the wealthy popping champagne, not the average worker. Poverty and food insecurity had surged under Biden and Harris, and homelessness hit an all-time high in 2023.
Take a drive down Los Angeles' Skid Row, filled with tents, people, and growing frustration.
If I can get back into another residence, then I won't make the same mistakes I made before.
According to new federal data, a record number of people are now unhoused, more than 653,000, a 12% population increase since last year. Mel Tilakaratna runs a nonprofit that provides free showers to people living on the street.
The system is completely overwhelmed.
Tilakaratna points to a rise in housing costs, the opioid epidemic, mental health issues, and the migrant crisis as factors exacerbating the problem in LA.
We have families, asylum seekers to families in LA who become homeless, and prior where we would be able to send them to a motel or a shelter within a couple of days, now there's absolutely no resources.
These issues are also creating friction in major cities. Back in September, New York Mayor Eric Adams revealed new fears as tens of thousands of asylum seekers flooded the city.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
In Phoenix, the city recently cleared a large encampment located downtown.
It seems that the quote-unquote cleanup that the city did just spread the mess out a lot further. People going through everyone's dumpsters, dragging stuff out into the streets.
Across LA, officials have tried to clear out encampments.
They come hit tents and then all your stuff will be gone.
By September, a poll revealed that 52% of Americans felt worse off than they had been 4 years ago. Inflation, while global, bit hard into workers' wallets, and many blame Biden and Harris for not doing enough to ease the pain. Even the Financial Times weighed in, calling the so-called U.S. economic boom a mirage. Writer Ruchir Sharma described a lopsided recovery that benefited only the rich, while most Americans struggled with rising costs, growing debt, and being priced out of homes. It was a hollow boom, held up by government borrowing and spending. And yet, the Biden-Harris administration failed to fix these issues, despite holding control of both the House and Senate. They could have learned from Bernie Sanders, who back in 2017 was the most popular politician in America, thanks to his focus on helping working people. But instead, the Democratic leadership clung to their corporate donors and shunned left-wing populism. Even Senator Elizabeth Warren admitted on CNN that the DNC had rigged the 2016 primary in favor of Hillary Clinton. Their strategy was a disaster. Harris ran to the right of even Joe Biden, embracing conservative positions and cozying up to Republicans like Liz Cheney. She campaigned with Cheney, praising her and her father, Dick Cheney, once seen as the villains of the Iraq War. But this new Democratic Party, desperate for allies, now welcomed the Cheneys with open arms. Harris tried to out-hawk Trump on foreign policy, and her administration pledged unwavering support for Israel's military, even as the majority of Democrats opposed it. The Biden-Harris government sent $18 billion in military aid to Israel in a single year, despite calls from their base to stop the arms shipments. This move alienated swing state voters, particularly Arab Americans, who saw the Democrats as complicit in the violence in Gaza. Low Democratic voter turnout in key swing states like Michigan sealed Harris's fate. Arab American voters, disgusted with her unflinching support for Israel, stayed home.
Well, no surprise that Dearborn Heights, and city of Hamtramck voted all for President Trump. I think that there were a clear indication that this community was truly upset, angry at the Biden-Harris administration.
As a Palestinian, I could not get myself to bubble in Kamala Harris, who has repeatedly said over the last 7 or 8 months that she believes in Israel's right to defend itself.
Reuters reported that only 32% of Democrats showed up to vote, the lowest turnout in years. Independents even outnumbered Democrats at the polls. While Harris campaigned on vague promises to lower grocery prices, she quickly backtracked under pressure, failing to offer any concrete economic plan. Her entire message boiled down to one thing: vote for me because I'm not Trump. Trump, however, ran on a clear and simple platform: the economy. He played to his base, blaming immigrants and foreign nations like China and Mexico for America's problems, while conveniently ignoring the true causes: financialization, deindustrialization, and growing inequality. He promised to bring back jobs, particularly manufacturing, by taking them from other countries. The billionaire CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, made it clear: to Wall Street, the 2024 US presidential election didn't matter. Whether it was Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, both would keep Wall Street happy. I'm tired of hearing this is the biggest election of your lifetime. The reality is, over time, it doesn't matter, Larry Fink, BlackRock's CEO, said bluntly at an October 21st conference. According to the Financial Times, Fink doubled down, saying, "It really doesn't matter." He revealed that BlackRock was already working with both candidates, having conversations with both sides. After all, When you manage $11.5 trillion in assets, you play all sides. BlackRock's connection to the U.S. government runs deep. Veterans of the company have held top positions in the Biden administration, including within the Treasury.
It's pretty clear that whoever is the next president is going to have to deal with some sort of U.S. government debt crisis. And I'm concerned about how that response is going to be, regardless of which candidate wins. So, for example, Trump, in his case, when there was a major economic crisis in the form of, what happened economically as a result of lockdown policy and because of COVID-19, the person that he and his administration reached out to was Larry Fink of BlackRock, who implemented something we can get into later that some researchers have called the Going Direct Reset, which was basically a way to put money from QE directly in the hands of the private sector instead of public entities, sort of like it had been done before. And arguably that resulted in a massive wealth transfer, and BlackRock didn't really use that money to help Main Street at all. They used it to buy shares in their own ETFs, among other things. And then Kamala, in her case, her entire economic team is essentially led by former BlackRock executives. And that was also true for the Biden administration. So essentially BlackRock, which was also played a major role in sort of developing the bailouts in the 2008 economic crisis, which was under Obama, right? Will likely be developing the response for whatever this, coming economic crisis is, regardless of who gets in office.
Kamala Harris also had a BlackRock executive advising her on economic matters. Meanwhile, Trump's treasury was run by Steven Mnuchin, a former Goldman Sachs executive who made a killing as a hedge fund manager. Both Trump and Harris were in a race to win Wall Street's heart. As president, Trump slashed taxes for the wealthy, so much so that in 2018, the richest 400 families in the U.S. paid a lower tax rate, just 23%, than the bottom 50% of households, who paid an average of 24.2%. And Trump wasn't done. He vowed to cut taxes for the rich even further. An analysis showed that under Trump's plan, the top 5% would enjoy a nice tax break, while the bottom 95%, they'd face higher taxes, with the poorest 20% seeing a 4.8% increase. Steven Schwartzman, chief executive of the financial giant Blackstone, was one of Trump's biggest donors both in 2020 and 2024. He was the most compensated executive in the U.S. financial services in 2022 and a leading Republican megadonor. His firm Blackstone serves as the world's largest alternative asset manager and the world's largest commercial landlord on the planet. It owns more than 300,000 rental housing units in the United States. But with great power comes great eviction. Blackstone's ownership of most of the available real estate has sparked a housing crisis. In 2023, homelessness increased by 12%. It's summed up really well by The Guardian. Blackstone is the largest commercial landlord in history. It owns or has owned everything from apartment blocks and care homes to warehouses, film studios, hotels, and even data centers. If you've ever stayed at a Hilton, matched with someone on Bumble, or visited Legoland, you've encountered a slice of the Blackstone empire. And as Blackstone buys up homes, it is making the market for housing speculative, price-pushy, and leaving families with no place else to turn. By a far stretch, housing prices in the U.S. have outpaced wage growth over the course of the last decade. The housing bubble that burst in 2008, well, it's back, bigger than ever.
And, it won't. Nothing that's unsustainable is going to go on forever. The fact that it's gone on as long as it has, though, has gotten people to believe that. But it just means that, we're that much closer to the collapse. And when it happens, it's going to be even worse because we're collapsing from a much higher level, right? We have a much bigger bubble now. And so it's far more catastrophic when the air comes out than would have been the case had it happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And in fact, the more catastrophic it obviously is, the more pressure there is on the powers that be to delay it even more, because it's like so bad. I mean, we keep saying, well, it's our dollar, it's your problem. And to an extent, it is everybody's problem. But the longer they stay with it, the bigger that problem gets. And we certainly accelerated it by weaponizing the dollar. I mean, as if people didn't have enough economic reasons to de-dollarize.
Today, 45% of U.S. households spend more than 30% of their income on rent. Over 30% spend more than 40%, and nearly a quarter of households are pouring over half their income just to keep a roof over their heads, according to the 2024 economic report of the president. While BlackRock and Blackstone are different companies, their histories intertwine. BlackRock owns 6.56% of Blackstone, making it the second largest shareholder. The largest? Vanguard with 9.05%. Close behind is State Street with 4.12%. These three, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, are often called the Big Three of U.S. index fund managers. And if it feels like they're slowly taking over everything, well, you might be right. How do you think all of this will play out? Let us know in the comments below.